Perfect. So, welcome everyone. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. I was asked to come to give a presentation about working with immigrants. There's a lot of information, a lot of updates that it's important for service providers to know. So, I'm very happy to be here. Again, my name is Catherine Ramirez Mejia, and for the next hour, I will be presenting to you a presentation created by the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. So if you are new to MIRA Coalition, we are primarily a federal and state advocacy organization. So we do a lot of policy advocacy, both on the federal and state level, but also as a coalition, we are made up of over 150 plus member organizations throughout Massachusetts. So these are pro-immigrant organizations that are part of our coalition. And we're always looking to add additional organizations to be a MIRA member and to strengthen our coalition. So today, I would like to share with you some best practices for service providers when working with immigrants. Then I'm going to talk to you about developing internal protocols. This is particularly around immigration enforcement. Then I'm going to cover some of our Know Your Rights content that we share out with the general community, and some of our family preparedness content, which is really important for parents during this time. Then I'm going to talk about where to get legal help and some additional resources. If I have time, I might be able to talk about public charge. So some best practices for you all as service providers. So first off, there is a great deal of strength in this Zoom room, right? And I want to take the time to acknowledge that. You may already work closely with immigrant families, and you may already have strong connections with them. You may understand the unique needs of immigrants in your community, and you are maybe a trusted individual they look to for resources. You may be able to hold regular meeting times with them or communicate with them in various languages. And you may be able to provide follow-up conversations and additional support. And because of that, today I will be sharing with you some multilingual resources to share with immigrant families. And we really ask that service providers across Massachusetts are the ones that are there to help us share out these resources and provide follow-up conversations and additional support related to those resources. I want to acknowledge the fact that there may be individuals in this room that are immigrants. And so maybe you're learning about this content for yourself and your family, or those that work with immigrants. But that being said, I like to start off by understanding the immigrant and refugee experience. I myself am an immigrant, but there's a lot to learn. So first off, to better understand the immigrant and refugee experience of others, it's important to think about the reasons behind conflicts and crises around the world. So what is happening around the world? Why is it that families, individuals have moved to the United States and to move to Massachusetts in general? And what was their experience like moving from their home country? Data shows that while immigrating, 75% of children experience separation from a caregiver. It's also important to think about the issues encountered while relocating. So, families having to find housing or find employment or overcoming language barriers. And just like you and I and all of us are trying to keep up to date to all the changing immigration policies and laws, So are immigrants themselves, right? So they are also trying to take in the information as rapidly as they can and keep up to date. And unfortunately, we are all seeing the xenophobic reactions and policies towards newcomers on television and the news. Um, and so are immigrants, and so are children as well. They may be hearing negative reactions in the school system. Um, and then one question we receive quite often is, what is the pathway to citizenship for my client? And unfortunately, there may not always be a pathway to citizenship for your client. A lot of immigrants may have complicated immigration statuses. Um, and so this is something else that immigrants may be dealing with. So, should I ask about immigration status? Our answer is generally no, right? So, it's important to think about why you would want to know someone's immigration status. Sometimes immigrants do not know their immigration status or have complicated immigration status. So, to best build support, it's important to use proxy questions instead of directly asking them about their immigration status. And these proxy questions can still help you gather the information you're looking for. I understand that for grant purposes, for reporting purposes, organizations might want to know this information, but instead you could ask, what is the country of origin of your family? What are the languages spoken at home? And so without having to directly ask their immigration status. And it's if it's because you want to share immigration related resources, like the resources I'm going to share with you today, you can ask or you can say, I have immigration related resources. Would you like me to share those resources with you? So we're hearing right now that families may be fearful of leaving their homes. So some families may have already been separated, have experienced family separation, or they may be fearful of experiencing family separation. And so some immigrant children and adults have been fearful of leaving their homes. And we really ask that you meet them where they are, right? So you connect with them, check in with them virtually whenever appropriate within your role, but give them a call or connect with them in any virtual capacity that you're able to, or provide home visitations. I always like to share out mental health resources, but I'm always happy to add more to this slide. It's always important to connect immigrants to mental health resources. Um, so I've included the Massachusetts Behavioral Health Helpline and QR codes to the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers and Community Behavioral Health Centers. Um, there's also an organization based out of California called Immigrants Rising, and they have some online support groups for those that are undocumented. And their support groups vary by subtopics based on identity, but they are free and anyone can join. So I've included a link to their support groups as well. And I will be sharing the slides after the presentation. But it's also important not to project our own stresses and anxiety about immigration on to immigrant families. All right. So, whether you are in a role where you're communicating frequently with children or you're working with immigrant parents and they're asking you how to talk to their children, it's important to pay attention to signs of stress or behavioral changes. Um, and with children or children of immigrants, they may come to you and speak to you about their concerns or ask questions, but it's important to validate their experiences. And based on on their age level You can better determine how much information you can share with them, or better explain certain terms that they may have heard, but really just validate their experiences. But it's important that you speak to their parents, because oftentimes um, they are looking for information, and it is their parents that have that information. So speaking to their parents, being a support to their parents, and helping their parents kind of develop that conversation, if they're struggling to have that conversation with their children. So offering resources to the parents so that they can speak to their children about possibly the immigration statuses of the family. Is the family concerned about immigration enforcement? And does the family have a plan in case of an emergency? So later in this presentation, I'm going to share with you the family preparedness packet, which does exactly that. And it's a resource that you can share with families. But in addition to that, the Immigrant Learning Center has a great deal of stories, immigration related stories based on reading levels, to share with children as well. And when talking with youth, um, and young adults, we really encourage sharing stories of strength and power. So youth don't always know the stories of immigrants that came before them. So telling them about all the great stories of immigrants in literature, media, or in the community, and their resiliency, and letting them understand the power of organizing, the power of collective strength. Um, so again, using the Immigrant Learning Center, there's more stories based on age level. But I've also included here some links to a 7-minute animated Know Your Rights video for youth, both in English and Spanish. And it's from the perspective of a child speaking to their parents of the importance of their parents learning Know Your Rights content and family preparedness content. There's also an article here about an individual that was undocumented and was still able to obtain their academic goals. And then lastly, I've included links to some videos that have come forward, again, through the organization called Immigrants Rising. But these are adults that now live outside of the United States and have created vlogs. So either they were forced to leave the United States, or they felt as if they were forced to leave the United States. And now they are coming forward with their stories and sharing how their life is in other countries that they moved to. So this could potentially be a resource to those that are really having to make those difficult decisions about leaving the country, or maybe they're feeling forced to leave the country. So now I want to talk with you about developing internal policies within your organization. So if your organization has not already developed these policies, it's important to speak to leadership and IT teams about your data and software policies. Who has access to data and software? What information are we gathering? What are we collecting? So the best practice is to not record immigration-related information. If you don't need it, don't record it. And then it's a lot easier when thinking about data and software and that all of that privacy information. Um, and speak to your leadership and legal teams about protocols if immigration enforcement comes to your organization. Possibly there are protocols, but if not, we're going to talk about them today. As a reminder, if immigration officers do come into your place of work, they can look at whatever is in plain view. So if they walk into the main lobby or the main entrance and they're looking over the reception's desk, they can see whatever is in plain view. whatever documents are laid out. So it's important to keep those papers and files uh, filed away. Now, if you're an employer and you're concerned about your immigrant employees, there is guidance for employers created by the National Immigration Law Center. So I want to talk to you about private and public spaces. So if immigration enforcement were to come to your offices, um, they would be able to enter any public space. A public space is where the general public can enter, and this can include parking lots, main entrances, lobbies, hallways, or elevators. But each organization uses their space very differently. Some organizations have private parking lots. You have to have an ID to enter that parking lot. So it really depends on the organization. Um, but generally speaking, those are typically public spaces. Now, private spaces are a place within your organization that immigration enforcement and law enforcement must present a judicial warrant to enter. So they can't just walk into these areas. And that can include any private offices that have a door and could be locked at any time, staff lounges, classrooms, exam rooms, patient exam rooms, any restricted areas in an organization or hospital, or areas that are not open to the public. So anywhere that you might have to sign in, show your ID, um, and maybe restricted to the general public. Um, and immigration might use an administrative warrant. This is a separate type of warrant. And I will show you what an administrative warrant is and what a judicial warrant is. But essentially, if they have an administrative warrant, this is an internal warrant, um, that does not grant them access to the private areas of your organization. Um, so if they do come to your organization, it's important to ask for identification, right? So we're asking them to identify themselves. And this is because they may be dressed in casual clothing. We're asking to see a judicial warrant, a warrant that's been issued by the court and signed by a judge. And it should have the name of the individual they're looking for. It could be a client or a staff member, or it must have the address of your organization. But you can refuse to provide client information unless they have a judicial warrant. And you can always say, I choose to remain silent. So you have the right to remain silent. Some other language that you can use is if someone comes into your organization, and if your organization is developing protocols or you haven't yet, um, you can say, I am not personally authorized to allow you entry or release information. Let me connect you with our leadership team. You can also say we follow organization policy and cannot provide any information without consulting legal counsel. So it's important within your organization to have a point of contact. And maybe it's someone in leadership, maybe it's someone within the legal team. So who do we call in case they were to come to the organization? So this is a judicial warrant issued by a court, signed by a judge. And this is the difference between a judicial warrant on your left and an administrative warrant on your right. The judicial warrant is issued by the court, signed by a judge, and this would allow them entry into private spaces of your organization. Whereas the administrative warrant on the right is issued by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. It is not signed by a judge. It is not issued by a court. And it would not give them permission to enter the private areas of an organization or someone's home. see. I am going to proceed on to our Know Your Rights content, and then at the end of the presentation, I will have some time for questions. So there are three main agencies in the Department of Homeland Security. There's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Customs and Border Protection, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So USCIS, they review applications and conduct interviews for those that are applying for asylum or green card or special visa or renewing work permits or applying for citizenship. And as you can see here in this image, this individual is receiving a letter from USCIS, and most likely being invited to an in-person interview at a location nearest to their home. So this shows that immigrants are likely communicating with USCIS whenever applying for a particular status. Then there's Customs and Border Protection, CBP. So they patrol the US border within 100 miles of all borders. And as you can see in Massachusetts, Massachusetts is entirely within the 100-mile range of the border. So what that means is you or someone else could potentially be driving and see a sign like this one that says enforcement zone, and you would be pulled over and asked additional questions about your immigration status, and you would be required to answer. We haven't heard of any enforcement zones here in Massachusetts. Um, they're they've existed for a long time in other states, but if we hear about them, we will do our best to let everyone know. And then there's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So they are the ones that conduct immigration arrests, detentions, and deportation removals. Like I said earlier, they are sometimes dressed in casual clothing and drive unmarked vehicles when attempting to make an immigration arrest. So, how do people come in contact with immigration enforcement? It is through contact with the criminal system, or when applying for a benefit at USCIS while having a removal order or criminal charge, and through raids and targeted enforcement. And who is at risk of deportation? Really, it's anyone who is not a US citizen can be vulnerable if they fall under a ground of deportation, such as criminal charges, um, uh, or a prior order of deportation. So this can include someone that's unauthorized or undocumented, people with asylum or refugee status or some other form of protection, those that are lawful permanent residents or non-immigrants, such as those here on a student visa or a travel visa. And again, this could be because they fall under a ground of deportation, such as criminal charges or a prior order of deportation. So what are some reasons for deportation? Um, the first, it can be lack of lawful status. So if someone is undocumented or unauthorized or has overstayed a visa, that could be a reason. But largely it is due to criminal grounds, including nearly all drug convictions, some domestic violence convictions and violations of a protection order, some theft and fraud convictions, and immigration violations and fraud, and security related grounds such as gang involvement and terrorism. So, right now, it's important to share this information out. We've seen some stories in the news, and it's also really important to be mindful of information that's shared online. What can easily be found online, right? So on social media, this is a conversation that we also have with youth or college students, but what information out there um, is easily found or easily visible that could possibly be connected to anything on this screen. All right. I also unfortunately have an update to share with you all. If you haven't already heard about it, it's the expansion of expedited removal. So, the Trump administration has announced that it will move to quickly deport individuals who entered without a visa or out of status and have been in the United States for less than 2 years without giving them the opportunity to go in front of an immigration judge. Um, so, again, this is for those that entered without a visa or are undocumented or unauthorized. Um, and essentially, they will move to quickly deport these individuals if they have been in the United States for more than 2 years so far. They should carry proof of that. They should carry proof of resident documents, um, like a lease, show that you've been paying rent, or any documents that show that you've been going to school or work or have any medical related records, anything that shows that they've been in the United States for more than 2 years. We often receive the question, can I write a letter for my patient or my client saying that they've been um, with this organization as I've been their service provider for more than 2 years. Um, you can do that. However, we're really emphasizing any original documents that they've had uh, more than 2 years ago. And it's important they carry those documents with them. If someone's been in the United States for less than 2 years, they should carry proof that they are already in deportation proceedings if they are, and have valid parole status, or that they have an application pending. If they do have a pending immigration court case, they should check on the status of that every day to check for any changes and contact a lawyer or seek legal services. And if anyone is afraid of returning to their country of origin, they should tell the officer repeatedly and demand an asylum screening interview. I also want to update you about the registration rule that is now in effect. So, first off, many non citizens are already considered registered. So, that can include those that have a green card or a green card application pending, anyone that entered with a visa or parole, even if it's expired, anyone that has a work permit, or anyone that are in immigration court proceedings. So many immigrants are already considered registered. Now, the rule requires individuals of all ages who are not considered registered to complete a registration form. So the form G325R through their USCIS account, and then attend a fingerprinting appointment. Um, this may include individuals who have not had contact with immigration and those who have applied for status but have not yet been fingerprinted. Children 14 or older are supposed to register themselves. And those who are already registered are supposed to re-register within 30 days of turning 14. So this is what everyone needs to know. If you are registered, you may increase your risk of being identified for deportation and may face criminal charges for entering the United States unlawfully. But if you do not register or carry proof of registration, you may be at risk of being charged with a crime. So it's important to consult with the lawyer to better understand the individual's risk, because every situation is different. All right. With that being said, I want to share with you our Know Your Rights content that we share out with everyone. So largely, we let everyone know that if immigration does come to your home, do not open the door. Ask the officers to identify themselves, ask for a warrant signed by a judge, and slide a Know Your Rights card under the door or press it up against the window. You have the right to remain silent and to an attorney. You do not have to answer questions about immigration status or when you entered the country. You can state to the officers, I request my right to silence and to an attorney, and you can call a US citizen friend or family or an attorney. So these are the Know Your Rights cards. Hopefully you've heard about them so far. If you haven't, I'm happy you're learning about them here. Um, but essentially they are wallet-sized cards and you can print them in your offices. Um, they don't have to be red, the color red. They don't have to be the color red. They're printed in black and white. But essentially, on one side, they remind the individual of their constitutional rights in over 12 languages. And then on the other side, this is the side that they show to the officer. And it says, I do not wish to speak with you. I do not give you permission to enter my home. I do not give you permission to search any of my belongings. I choose to exercise my constitutional rights. So, what's great about this tool, again, it's wallet size. You can carry it around in your purse, in your wallet, have it near your door, have it in your car. It is a non-verbal tool that immigrants can use to assert their constitutional rights. They do not need to know how to say any of this language. They just need to show the card to the officer to help them assert their rights. Now, we share out these resources because we want everyone to know their constitutional rights and be able to assert them. We also understand that there may be times where um, asserting your rights or standing up for your rights isn't going to be well received. So it's important for everyone to decide if they're in a safe location, if it's safe to assert their rights. It's really their decision whether or not they feel safe to assert their rights. And we understand that um, just by asserting your rights doesn't always mean that your rights will be respected or heard. Um, so I just wanted to give that message as well. So reminding everyone to look for a judicial warrant to enter their home. Now, if someone is arrested or detained, they have the right to remain silent, to call a lawyer or family member, to be visited in detention by a lawyer, and to contact their consulate. They do not need to sign anything or take voluntary departure of the United States. They should first ask a lawyer, and they do not need to listen to immigration agents about their rights. Instead, they should ask a lawyer for facts. If you know someone that has been detained, there is an online detainee locator where you can find the whereabouts of the individual that has been detained. There's also a hotline I want to share with you. And so if you do see ICE in your community, please use this hotline. This organization will send someone out in your area to better verify the ICE sighting, to gather information from the community, and they can help you in asserting your rights. And essentially, just important to that we all within Massachusetts are collecting information and better understanding where ICE is present in Massachusetts. So now I want to share with you the family preparedness packets. So this is very important to share with immigrant parents. Um, these packets are available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. But as I mentioned earlier, children may not know about the immigration statuses of themselves or their parents or their family members. So during this time, it's important that parents are sitting their children down and having those conversations, and letting them know um, whether or not the family is concerned about family separation and what is their plans. So the family preparedness packet will help parents think about who will take care of their children in case they are separated. Um, and so that means finding a trusted adult to take care of their children. Also, what are the family's plans to reunite? So if the family wants to reunite outside of the United States, what documents are needed in order to do so? Um, so some of that can include having a passport ready for your children to travel internationally, creating a travel document, travel letter, so your child can get on a plane with a trusted adult um, and and reunite with you in another country. Um, and just making sure that the family has all up to date documents. So, when thinking about a trusted adult to take care of their children, there are four main options that parents have. The first is an informal option, and this is when parents speak to possibly a relative, a neighbor, someone in the church, and they say, I trust you to take care of my children if I was ever separated from them due to immigration. Now, because this is an informal conversation, maybe it's written down on a piece of paper, maybe it's not. This would not give the trusted adult the legal rights to the child's school or doctor. And I use the example of godparents. Godparents would not have the legal rights to a child's school or doctor. Now, there are two options within the family preparedness packet that provide the trusted adult with more legal rights. So the first is the caregiver authorization affidavit. This gives a trusted adult the right to make decisions about the child's healthcare and education for up to 2 years. The parents keep all the rights and can end this contract at any time. It needs a signature of only one parent, and it must be signed by two witnesses, and it must be notarized. Then there's a temporary agent authorization. This allows the trusted adult to make any decisions a parent can make, including about property and finances. It's valid for 60 days, but it can be renewed. Both parents must sign if they're available, and it must be signed by the trusted adult and two witnesses. It does not need to be notarized. And lastly, there's guardianship. And this is when a legal guardian has all the rights a parent has, but exercises these rights instead of the parent, and it must be obtained through the courts. So please, if you are working with immigrant parents, please share with them the family preparedness packet and help them to understand their options when thinking about a trusted adult to take care of their children. We also remind everyone it's important to um, uh, organize your important documents, and I've created a list here. Open all your mail, make sure another family member knows where to access these important documents in case of emergency. So where can families get legal help? They should only be speaking to an attorney or an accredited representative. An accredited representative works for a nonprofit organization and has received special training. And an attorney or lawyer that is licensed to practice law in the United States, reminding families that other countries have other laws. But they should not be listening to notary publics or notarios. They are not lawyers and cannot provide legal advice. And they should also not be listening to interpreters or tax preparers for legal advice. What ends up happening is that immigrant families spend a lot of money and a lot of time um, giving their money to these individuals only to find out that their applications have not been filed and they have lost a lot of money. So if you have heard of any of this happening in your community, we encourage everyone to file a complaint that they've been victim to fraud. We also recommend the following legal resources. So the Massachusetts Legal Resource Finder, um, is a really great legal directory in Massachusetts. Also, the city of Boston has free consultations as well. And then if someone is looking outside of Massachusetts, we recommend the Immigration Advocates Network Legal Directory. All right. And I just want to share with you the resources that we have available. So if families are asking you questions, um, validating their experiences, but letting them know that you are unable to answer any legal questions or provide any legal advice since you are likely not a lawyer, but instead try to redirect them to the resources we have available on our Know Your Rights website, webpage. So we have Know Your Rights presentations, recordings in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole, and additional languages. We have printable handouts, posters, Know Your Rights cards, and those family preparedness packets. So we have a great deal of printable materials and also recordings. And we're translating additional languages as well currently. We also have an immigration helpline. So this is to answer all general immigration questions. Um, and it can be used by anyone. At first, it was for service providers, but now it's really for anyone that has general immigration questions. It is not a form of legal representation. It is not a number to call in case of emergency, but it can help answer any general questions you may have, like what form should I be using, things like that. I always like to share these resources, but SafeLink is a domestic violence hotline with translations available in 130 plus languages, and the parental stress line as well as. So with that being said, I've everything that is on our website is I've gathered here for you in this resource folder. And again, I will be sharing out the slides with you as well. But there's more information there about understanding eligibility of immigrant eligibility for mass health, understanding transitional assistance, and SNAP eligibility for immigrants, things on tuition equity, and much more. And with that being said, I'm going to stop for questions.
Thank you, Catherine. We're going to stop the recording as well. If I can do that. Okay, I'm going to stop that.